What's up, ladybots and gentle droids? I am Dylan, the Techno-Giz guy, and today I'm about to violate my GPD Win 4 so bad that it's going to take the warranty out. What am I talking about? So a few months back, I made a video about this guy. This is the GPD Win 4. I bought this right before the tariffs got really bad. I got this for its actual MSRP price, which was still a little expensive for what it is. And I have actually really enjoyed it. Like I said in my review, this device has done more to save my relationship with gaming than any other console or even PC that I've ever had. However, I've had a problem with it. For the longest time, I was having some really bad frame stuttering. Most AAA titles, I was basically needing to run them at 720p and use lossless frame scaling to do some frame generation with this thing. And that was the only way I was actually able to get some stable performance out of a lot of games. Now, I didn't mind because most of the games I was able to get to a point where I could get them to stay around, right around 45 to 50 FPS. So I wasn't generating too many fake frames, but it was definitely noticeable. The problem was, every time I booted up a game that was intensive graphically, from a AAA studio, it was sending the APU in this guy, the AMD chip that runs the CPU and GPU, it was sending it to about 97 degrees Celsius, which is very hot to just sit there and be kind of stable at. The problem with that is most chips will start thermal throttling at about 100 degrees Celsius, right around that area. It depends on the chip. At 97 degree average, anytime the GPU had to work a little bit harder on this guy, I was hitting thermal throttling and my frame time graph on Steam would go from a nice straight line to jagged edges. Looks like the stock market kind of, or the Bitcoin graph. So what we're doing today is we're gonna tear this thing open. I'm going to get rid of the cheap thermal paste that comes with this, and I'm gonna replace it with something a lot better. So let's jump over to the bench and take this thing apart. Void the warranty. This will void your warranty. So if you bought a GPD Win 4 and you have a warranty, this will void it. You are going to be taking it apart, changing components technically. You have been warned. Okay, so we're here at my workbench. I have the GPD on the table. I got a heat gun here that I borrowed from my brother because I don't have one. You can probably get away with using a blow dryer for this, a hair dryer, if you have one. I did have one, but my brother had a heat gun and I figured I would just borrow his heat gun. So before we get into this, there's a couple things you got to know. So there are 2 screws up top, 2 screws on the right side and 2 screws on the left side. And then on the bottom here, we actually have to remove this plastic cover to get to 2 more screws, and that is what the heat gun is for. So I don't know where my iFixit kit went with the picks, so I'm just gonna use this guitar pick that I have from a pair of sunglasses. I'm gonna slide my screen up because I don't wanna get the screen hot, even though I only have this set to 160, and kind of just gonna warm this up, kind of keep it away a little bit. Let's see what that does for us. Guys, I'm gonna try to keep this in the frame as much as I can. I'm gonna bump this up a little bit to like 180 because I don't think that 150 is enough to get this going. This guy will go up to like 1,000 degrees or something. It's insane. So I might end up buying one of these for myself. I don't know. I don't really need something this fancy. My brother does a lot more electronics work than I do. So I kind of want to just see if I can maybe get it started over here. Kind of just going through and evenly dispersing heat because I don't want the plastic to get too hot and melt. All right, it's starting to come a little bit. I had to grab a little screwdriver here. I'm gonna try to put this here so that way I can kind of work it on it at the same time. It's kind of starting to go back. So I did bend it a little bit, pulling it off, but I did get it off, and I think it'll bend back. So the idea is that you want to use the heat gun. I'm gonna turn this off. So I gotta let that cool down, but the idea is you want to use the heat gun to kind of melt the glue a little bit, so that way you're not just ripping it off, because you'll either break the plastic or the glue will stay on the device here. You can see a little bit of it towards the end there did, but in a lot of cases, you can just reheat this back up and stick it back on. I may not stick mine back on, but we'll see. So these are Phillips head screws, and there are 2 down here. I'm gonna grab a little tiny Phillips screwdriver, pull these 2 out. These are tiny little screws, guys, so I mean, you guys can see these are real tiny little screws, so do not drop them. They are also black, so if you drop them on a carpet, which I am currently sitting on right now, you will probably never find them again. They are very small. In fact, I'm gonna move the GPD just a little bit. So I got the 2 bottom screws out. I'm gonna put those in the lid of my iFixit kit here. I'm gonna flip the Win 4 over. I think the process that I'm currently doing is the same for all GPD Win 4 handhelds. So whether you have one of the older ones or you have the 2025 like I have, you should be okay. All right, luckily these screws are magnetic, so GPD, really good job on that, because a lot of screws are not. And now this should just kind of come off. So I'm gonna get my guitar pick under here, and kind of pick up on it. I'm not gonna force it. Pretty sure I got all the screws out. I don't feel any hidden screws under there. I did actually look up a manual on how to do this, so it's easy if you go in from the bottom and kind of work it. I'm not gonna run the length because I'm pretty sure somewhere around here there is a ribbon cable, and I do not want to snap a ribbon cable. That would be very bad. Okay, so it's held in with clips, so once you get it kind of started, then you can just kind of pull, and I was right. So right there, when you pull it up, you don't want to just yank it off, right? So when you pull it up, there are actually 2 little wires here that you want to keep good track of. So this one here, we're going to unplug this little ribbon connector here. And this one over here is the Wi-Fi antenna. So I'm actually just going to leave the Wi-Fi antenna hooked up. The other ribbon cable that was here is for the extra buttons that are on the back of this. And then we have the GPD Win 4. I'm gonna grab my little helping hands here. Okay, so I'm not actually using the helping hands here to hold it. I'm just kind of using it to hold it up for you guys. We have the battery here. We have the fan, which the fan is what we're gonna wanna get into here. We have the SSD right here. So if you wanted to swap the SSD out, it's right here. Looks like it is a Phillips screw, Phillips screw. So it looks like it's 3 Phillips screws to take off the top. So kind of, I'll try to zoom in on this, but I don't really have like a proper setup here for this. So looks like we need to remove this screw. There's a screw right there, and there's a little tiny screw right there that we got to take out, and that will get the cooler off. So I also got to say, the battery on this is a very interesting shape. Okay, so this shouldn't be in my way too bad, just because, like I said, I'm not doing anything with the SSD, so I'm just gonna get this little guy here. Now the cooler is coming off. So the cooler, after you get it unscrewed, is just gonna kind of come up like this. There's a little fan cable here. I'm gonna unplug that and drop it back on it. Flips up, it looks like. So from right here, you can get to the SSD. So if you want to swap out the SSD, you can do that right here. Like I said, M.2 right here. It is a full-sized M.2. Not sure what brand is underneath here, but I don't really care. This is a 2 terabyte drive, and given the price of solid state storage right now, I'm more than happy with this. I am gonna go a little bit deeper.
What?
So where I am gonna go is these heat pipes right here and this big metal block. that is the chip. So that is going to be our APU with the GPU and CPU together. It looks like to get this out, there is 4 screws here. From here, you could also swap out your battery as well as the triggers. And if you keep going, you can actually swap out the joysticks. I've seen people do it. It's actually interesting. There's like more space here that they could have hypothetically put more battery. Just my thought. But like literally all of this space over here, switch right here, that switches the input from controller to mouse mode, which you don't really need because this has an optical mouse, which I covered in my review. And the SD card slot's here, but they easily, I mean, both of those components are lower than the main board. And this battery is sitting right on top. So, I mean, they definitely could have stuck another little tiny cell here and gotten better battery life. I know on the Win 5, they have that external battery, which at first I didn't really like. And then I kind of thought it is a good idea. It removes the weight from the actual device if you're kind of stationary and you can put the battery in your backpack or something. You take those 4 screws out and that one from earlier and the entire cooling assembly just comes right off. So, copper heat pipes. There is some thermal compound on here for the VRMs. So, we're going to zoom out a little bit here. I need alcohol. There is no alcohol in that. So, I have my little dispenser here. This is just containing 99% isopropyl. Just going to get this paper towel a little wet here with the isopropyl. Then we're gonna start cleaning off this thermal goop. I can tell right off the bat that this is very cheap thermal paste, which I'm not surprised, that's fine. Almost every computer vendor on the planet uses cheap thermal paste because it's an easy place that they can cut costs, and as long as it doesn't usually make a huge difference until you start getting into some of the more quality stuff. But in this case, I can tell that this is just real cheap stuff. A lot of people online say that changing the thermal paste out on these GPDs is one of the best things you can do. The one guy was saying he was getting 10 degrees cooler on his Win 4. He had the same Win 4 I do, and he said that he was getting a 10 degree Celsius cooler difference after changing. Now, I'm using really good thermal stuff, so we're gonna see how that goes. And I'm just trying to get all that paste kind of cleared out and out of here. Actual CPU is a little harder. Should probably get Q-tips for this, but I'm just gonna dab, kind of hitting it with a polishing motion, so like I'm spinning the paper towel a little bit to pick up as much as I can. If you get it off of the chip, that's okay. I'm gonna get a Q-tip, clean that up. That's what you should do. And I'm just gonna get this guy coated in a little bit of isopropyl here and just... By the way, guys, the reason I can tell that this is cheap thermal compound is because good thermal compound should be like a paste. This is kind of watery and it's been off for about an hour and it's at room temperature. It's only like maybe 68 degrees in my office, so the only time you really want to see thermal compound look like this is if it's that really nice like liquid metal stuff, because that liquid metal stuff, basically anything above room temperature, like average room temperature, and it's gonna melt. So I'm just kind of getting all around the chip with Q-tip. It doesn't have to be perfect. You should get it as clean as you can, but it's not gonna really mess with anything. The only time you will have a problem with the thermal compound is, again, if you have that liquid metal stuff, because the liquid metal is liquid metal. So if it gets on components that it's not supposed to be on, it might short them. If you don't believe me, by the way, Linus Tech Tips literally did a video where they just caked a CPU in thermal paste, including the socket and pins, and it still worked. All right, I think that's about as good as it's gonna get. So we're gonna kind of get into here, and I'm gonna put my little finger condoms on, because I am not using thermal compound. I'm going to be using the Honeywell phase change thermal pad. So this stuff is kind of like a phase change material as well, like liquid metal, except it starts its life as a solid pad. This is not the Honeywell material, by the way. It is the same type of material, but I was not gonna pay for the Honeywell material. because it's very expensive, and one of the only good places to get it in small quantities is Linus Tech Tips store. And as much as I don't mind supporting Linus Tech Tips, I do love Linus Tech Tips. With the tariffs in my country right now, I would rather not kind of deal with that. Okay, so you're gonna stick these little finger condoms on. I'm not gonna put all 4 on. I'm just gonna try to be real careful and only touch it with these 2 fingers. They go on just like condoms too, so if you can't figure out how to get these on, how's the child support payment going? So what I'm kind of doing here is marking it. So I marked where the chip is, and now I'm just gonna grab like a pair of scissors and cut this. So you gotta be careful touching this Honeywell stuff, this thermal change stuff. Literally just like touching this, it's kind of changing phase in my hand. All right, I got it on. It's not covering the whole chip, but again, it's gonna change state to like a liquid anyway. I am not super concerned with it. I do still have to get the top off here. So now we just got to do everything we did in reverse. I am not going to swap out the other ones that were on the VRMs. I think they're going to be fine. And in fact, if I'm looking at it, the VRM coolers literally just go to this metal plate, whereas all of this is hooked to the copper. So all we got to do is kind of just get this down evenly. There's dust in here. How is there dust in here? This thing's only a couple months old. Now we can start reassembly. Put this over here. So I'm going to start with this lower corner here because it's easy enough. So yeah, you just want to screw down the heatsink in a cross manner because that will evenly distribute the weight and really get that pad squeezed out and flat. Or if you're using paste, same effect. Drop the fan down and I can plug it in here. Be real gentle with that connector because it is fragile. Screw this back in. Route this over here so it doesn't get in the way. And then that's it. We're gonna bring Wi-Fi antenna back over. I said I wasn't gonna disconnect this earlier and I did end up disconnecting it. If you disconnect the Wi-Fi antenna, it's just a pin that like sits there kinda. It's like a magnetic friction pin. Be very gentle with it because these are not robust connectors. I have been fortunate in my life that I've never actually broken one of these that I can remember, but they are very easy to break and they can be very annoying to get lined up, as you can see right here. All right, so what I did for that was, because it was kind of being mean, I kind of just put it over it and then used my screwdriver to kind of push down on it. Works good. And then I'm just gonna bring the lid over, plug this back into its little connector over here. Okay. So those are back on now, and I'm just gonna kind of sit this down here and snap it into place. Before I screw everything back together, I just wanna make sure this thing turns on. Also, it feels weird without the case. I've had that rubber silicone case on it. Hey, it turns on, so I didn't break my expensive handheld in the middle of tariff time when I won't be able to replace it easily. All right, it booted up. All right, I'm gonna boot up Cyberpunk and just see what it does. And of course, it's gonna process the Vulkan shaders. All right, I'm just gonna run the benchmark for Cyberpunk real quick. I turned off my frame generation, so this should be, okay, GP went up to about 100%, but we're still at 60C. Wow. And we're sitting at 70 degrees Celsius. I haven't seen the FPS drop once. And like I said, I have frame generation turned off right now. Yeah, I mean, it is hard locked. Wow. Okay. So that was that at 720p. Okay. So that was it. I've had a couple days to kind of play with this a little bit and test it. I am truly stunned with the performance. So I was running most AAA titles right around 720p. And like I said, I was getting I was trying to get the games to where they'd be about 50 frames, as high as I could get them, and then turning on frame generation to try to keep the chip from throttling. And even with that, I was still having some problems here and there. For one, I recently started trying to play the Call of Duty Advanced Warfare campaign. That game does not support frame generation. I could not, no matter what I tried, get lossless frame scaling to work. So I just couldn't play on the GPD because it kept thermal throttling. Now, with the clone of the Honeywell PTM 7950, Cyberpunk, I was able to bump up to 1600 by 900, turn off frame gen, and I even bumped some of my graphical settings up higher. Not too high, just a couple of the detail settings I was able to increase. And the chip, while playing Cyberpunk, and I didn't actually just run the benchmark. I ran the benchmark in the video, as you guys saw, but over the last few days I've actually had time to sit and play games on the device. Cyberpunk, at a higher resolution with higher detail, the chip is staying right around 75 degrees C. 75 degrees C is actually seeming to be where it just sits now. So we went from any time I booted up a AAA game, it was sitting at 97C and thermal throttling constantly, to now every game I have thrown at this, the chip sits at 75 degrees C, right around that area. I don't think I've ever once even seen it touch 80 in the time I've been playing. Helldivers 2. Now this was a big one for me because a lot of my friends have started playing Helldivers, and sure, I can play it on my computer if I want, but I wanted to be able to play it on the go. And I can now. Before, even on the Steam Deck preset, I was getting a lot of frame jitter because of the thermal throttling. Now, it runs fine. In fact, I even bumped the preset from the Steam Deck preset to low or medium, whatever's like slightly higher than the Steam Deck. It's not super high, it's still, you can still tell the graphic fidelity is not all there. And I am running that game at 720p. But on a 7-inch screen, I don't really care, right? 720p is fine, as Nintendo proved with their console. Yeah, so I'm getting 60 FPS consistent without frame gen in all the games I'm testing. So yeah, I booted up GTA 5 Enhanced, wanted to play the GTA 5 campaign for the 100th time. I was able to set all the settings to high or very high and still get 60 FPS in that game with no frame generation. So yeah, I'm super happy because all the lower indie games that I was playing, I was already having no problem running those. Now, all the AAA games that I had to use frame gen just to try to not thermal throttle, and I was still getting some thermal throttling on some games, now I can play all of the games and the chip never goes above 75, 78, I think was the highest I saw. So yeah, I strongly recommend doing this mod. Even if you just go with something like better thermal paste, something like Arctic Silver, what is it, Arctic Silver Platinum or whatever, or you know, whatever brand of thermal paste you prefer. One thing I will note, and I kind of found this out from talking to people on Reddit, some of the knockoff stuff does not have a very good longevity. What I mean by that is one person on Reddit was saying he had a problem where he bought knockoff thermal change stuff, and after about 6 to 8 months, it started to degrade, and he noticed his performance degrading with it, the cooling performance. And he swapped it out and it fixed it. So the OEM stuff, or at least good knockoffs, don't seem to do that. I do not know how good of a knockoff I got. I'm going to link both the version that I got as well as a link to the official Honeywell stuff, and you guys can decide for yourself. If in 6 months the performance starts getting degraded on my Win 4 and the performance of it starts tanking, I will probably take it apart again and replace it with genuine Honeywell thermal pad. But right off the gate, I am very impressed. Okay, so that was it. We violated the warranty. We got a hell of a lot more performance out of it. And honestly, it made this device even better. I already loved my GPD Win 4. Absolutely have loved this thing since I got it. It's always in my backpack. I take it with me every day. I don't always use it, but it's always with me so I can use it. And I have been playing a lot of games on it, both indie and AAA. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider leaving a like. It helps a lot. Channel's been growing kind of slowly, but we are still growing, which I'm very grateful for because I have not been that great about being consistent on here. It's been a rough time, so I'm trying. But thank you guys for your support. Thank you for the comments. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Again, please leave a like if you did. Subscribe if you're new to the channel and you like what you see. I do tech stuff. I try to post weekly videos. I'm not always great about it, but I do love technology. I'm passionate about it, passionate about privacy, security, and I want to share that passion with you guys and hopefully teach you something along the way. That's the goal, at least. So, I am Dylan, the Technogiz guy, and I will see you, lovely lady bots and gentle droids, in the next video. Keep it peaceful.
I cracked the case like a legend in the basement. Turn that fear into a fearless replacement. Scrape